Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you this morning. Many months ago, Father Jim Fleming called me and he said, "Greg, do you believe in free speech?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Good, you're giving one on May 18th. I work with gang members, so apparently the folks here thought that made me eminently suited to address the class of 2013. Yeah, what Martin Luther King says about church could well be said of your time here at Wheeling Jesuit. It's not the place you come to, it's the place you go from. And you go from here with a vision of wanting the world to look differently than it currently looks. The prophet Habakkuk writes, "The vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, wait for it." But you, the graduates of 2013, don't want to wait too long with your arms crossed and tapping your feet. You want to make something happen. You want to create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. You want to pay attention and find yourself within the notice of God and somehow including others in that same notice. I had a very earnest 16-year-old gang member stand in front of my desk not long ago, and he said, "Look, I need your divided attention." And I said, "Well, you are in luck, because that's exactly what you'll be getting today." So all of us are called to imagine a community of kinship and a circle of compassion. And then we're called to imagine that nobody is standing outside that circle. And so we choose to dismantle the barriers that exclude. And we inch our way out to the margins where we get to stand with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless, with those whose dignity has been denied and those whose burdens are more than they can bear. All of you graduates have had that particular moment when you've been able and privileged to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out, with the demonized so that the demonizing will stop, and with the disposable so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. And I suspect that if kinship was our goal, we would no longer be promoting justice. We would, in fact, be celebrating it. For no kinship, no justice. No kinship, no peace. No matter how singularly focused we may well be on those worthy goals. So for 25 years, it's been the privilege of my life to work with gang members, and they've taught me everything of value. But in the last 2 years, they've taught me how to text, and I couldn't be more grateful to them. I find that it sure beats the heck out of actually talking to people. And so I'm pretty dexterous at it, LOL and OMG and BTW. And the homies have taught me a new one, OHN, which apparently stands for, "Oh, hell no." And I've been using that one quite a bit lately. So there I am in a car with two homies, Manuel and Poncho, older vatos who've worked for me for a while, do a variety of things, tattooed, been to prison. We're gonna go give a talk somewhere, and we're about 15 minutes on the road, and Manuel in the front seat gets an incoming, and he reads it to himself, and he chuckles. And I say, "What is it?" And he goes, "Oh, it's dumb. It's from Snoopy back at the office." Well, I'd just seen Snoopy. Snoopy greeted me as the day began. We have 300 employees there. And Snoopy and Manuel work together in the clock-in room where they clock in all our workers. I said, "What's he say?" "Oh, it's dumb. Hang on. Hey, dog, it's me, Snoops. Yeah, they got my ass locked up at county jail. They're charging me with being the ugliest vato in America. You have to come down right now, show them they got the wrong guy." Well, we died laughing, and then I realized that Manuel and Snoopy are enemies. They're from rival gangs. They used to shoot bullets at each other. Now they shoot text messages. And there's a word for that, and the word is kinship. How do we obliterate once and for all the illusion that we are separate, that there is an us and a them? No kinship, no peace. No kinship, no justice. So we want to bridge the distance that exists, even in service provider, service recipient, and arrive at something more greatly resembling exquisite mutuality. One of the great privileges of my life was knowing Cesar Chavez as a friend. And I remember once a reporter had said to him, "Wow, these farm workers, they sure love you." And Cesar just shrugged and smiled, and he said, "The feeling's mutual." And that's where we want to arrive. Homeboy Industries was born during the time I was pastor of the poorest parish in the city of Los Angeles with the highest concentration of gang activity in the world, according to the LAPD. It was stuck in the middle of two very large housing projects, the largest grouping of public housing west of the Mississippi. I buried my first young person killed because of this sadness in 1988, and when I return home to Los Angeles early this upcoming week, I will bury my 187th. We did a lot of things in the early days. We started a school because there were so many middle school aged gang members who had been given the boot from their home school. We started a jobs program. And then we started businesses because we couldn't wait for employers to hire folks with felonies. So we started Homeboy Bakery in 1992. 2 months later, we started Homeboy Tortillas, and then we came up with the highfalutin Homeboy Industries, as if there was any industry involved in this. Not everything worked. Homeboy Plumbing really was not hugely successful. Who knew? People didn't want gang members in their homes. I did not see that coming. And you never choose to become this, but we've backed our way into becoming the largest gang intervention, rehab, and reentry program in the country. So 15,000 folks a year walk through our doors, and we have every imaginable curricular thing from anger management to parenting. Free tattoo removal. No place on the planet Earth removes more tattoos than we do. We have a designated clinic, 3 laser machines, 40 volunteer doctors, 10,000 treatments a year. So if any of you are starting to regret that Cardinals tattoo you got, see me afterwards. And then we have 7 businesses and training programs, the bakery and Homeboy Silkscreen, and a variety of restaurants and merchandising outlets, and a restaurant now in LAX, American Airlines Terminal. And Homegirl Cafe, where women with records, young ladies from rival gangs, waitresses with attitude will gladly take your order. Some time ago, Oscar-winning actress Diane Keaton showed up for lunch. She of Academy Award for Annie Hall and the Godfather movies, big movie star. She shows up, and her waitress this day is Glinda. And Glinda's a homegirl, been there, done that, tattooed, been to prison, a felon. She doesn't know who Diane Keaton is. And so she's taking her order, and Diane Keaton says, "What do you recommend?" And Glinda rattles off the 3 platillos that she particularly likes, and Diane Keaton says, "I'll have that second one. That sounds good." And it's at that moment something dawns on Glinda. She looks at Diane Keaton, she says, "Wait a minute, I feel like I know you, like maybe we've met." And Diane Keaton decides to deflect it humbly. "Oh, I don't know, I suppose I have one of those faces that people think they've seen before." And then Glinda goes, "No, now I know. We were locked up together." Yeah, honest to God, that just took my breath away when I heard it. And I don't believe we've had any further Diane Keaton sightings now that I think of it. But suddenly kinship so quickly, Oscar-winning actress, attitudinal waitress, exactly what God had in mind. And to discover what's on God's mind, we need go no further than Jesus speaking to the gathered as he says, "That you may be one." It's about kinship. Wheeling Jesuit is not the place you've come to, it is the place you go from to create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. For all of you are called to be what Alice Miller, the late great child psychologist, called enlightened witnesses, people who through your kindness and tenderness and focused, attentive love return people to themselves. You don't hold the bar up and ask anybody to measure up, you just show up. Then you hold the mirror up and you tell people the truth, knowing that your truth is my truth and my truth is a gang member's truth, and it's all the same truth, and here's the truth. You are exactly what God had in mind when God made you. And then you watch folks on the margins, in particular, as they inhabit that truth, as they become that truth. And no bullet can pierce that. No 4 prison walls can keep that out, and death can't touch it. Wheeling Jesuit is not the place you've come to. It is the place you will go from to announce that message into the world and infuse it with a hope, because the world finds hope foreign. People ask me often enough about enemies that work together, and it's difficult at first. A homie will come in and say, I'm ready, and I'll say, well, I have an opening in the bakery, but you have to work with X, Y, and Z, and I rattle off the names of rivals, enemies, and they always do the same thing. They think for a while, and then they'll say, I'll work with them, but I'm not going to talk to them, which used to bother me in the old days, until you discover, of course, that it's impossible for human beings to demonize people they know. So I had a homie, everybody called him Youngster, that was his gang name, a little tiny guy, and I thought he was ready, so I bring him to our Homeboy silkscreen factory, our biggest business, been around for 19 years. Thousands of gang members have worked there. We have 2,500 customers from all over the country, high quality work, reasonably priced. We UPS to Wheeling. So I walk him in, I introduce him to his 30 coworkers on the floor of our huge factory. I watch him as he shakes hands, even with enemies, looks them straight in the eyes. And I think, wow, this is great. And then he gets to this last guy, a guy who seems to be wanting to avoid this encounter altogether, a guy everybody calls Puppet. And when Puppet and Youngster are in each other's vicinity, they mumble something, they stare at their shoes, they don't shake hands. Well, I know they're enemies, I know they're rivals, because I know what gangs they're from, but he just finished shaking hands with other enemies. I discover later that this is a hatred that's very personal and deep, beyond which neither of them think they can really get past. So I sense that much at the moment, and I say, look, if you guys can't hang working together, let me know. I got a bunch of people who want this job. And they say nothing. About 6 months later, a Puppet walks to a store some distance from his home, one of those little corner stores. He buys something. On the way home, he decides to take a shortcut, so he dodges into an alley, and suddenly, unexpectedly, he's surrounded by 10 members of a rival gang, and they beat him badly, and he falls to the ground, and while he's lying there, they will not stop kicking his head until he's lifeless. Someone finds his body and takes him to White Memorial Hospital, where he's declared effectively brain dead. But they keep him connected to machines for 48 hours so they can get 2 days of a flat read with no brain activity, so the doctors can sign the death certificate. This allowed family and friends to gather. I was at St. Louis University giving a talk. I flew home immediately. I've seen a lot of horrible things in my life, but nothing to compare to the sight of this young man with his head swollen many times its size. It was horrifying. You could barely train your eyes on him. And so at the end of the 48-hour period, I gave him a blessing prayer, anointed his forehead with oil. We disconnected. and a week later I buried him. But in the first 24 hours, as Puppet was in the hospital beaten, I was alone in my office. It was 8:30 at night, and the phone rang, and it was Youngster, Puppet's co-worker from the silk screen. And he says, "Hey, that's messed up about what happened to Puppet." And I said, "Yes, it is." And then with a certain kind of eagerness even, he says, is there anything I can do? Can I give him my blood? And we both fall silent under the weight of it, until finally he breaks the silence, choking back his tears, and he says with great deliberation, "He was not my enemy. He was my friend. We worked together." Now, can I say that always happens at Homeboy Industries? Yes, of course. Any exceptions? No, not a single one. And it shouldn't surprise us that God's own dream come true for us, that we be one, just happens to be our own deepest longing for ourselves. For it turns out it's mutual, and Wheeling Jesuit is not the place you've come to. It is the place you go from, so you can create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. For the vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, we wait for it. God bless you, class of 2013. Thank you.